Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Guys, so I can't believe what has happened over the last 24 hours. We now have David Lammy as our Foreign Secretary. David Lammy is now the man who will be negotiating Britain's role in the future on an international diplomatic spectrum stage, whatever you want to call it. And guys, this is probably the most inept man I have ever come across. Guys, this guy's going to get us into a war without a shadow of a doubt. Now, before I say this, guys, and before I go on, I want to give you some of my credentials before I go on, guys, all right? And, and why I'm saying this, you'll understand once I've told you a little bit more about myself. These are things I've let out in our old platform, but I'm going to highlight them here, guys, okay? So, mostly after leaving the military. So, for those of you who don't know, I'm ex-military, parachute regiment. After leaving the military in 2010, I was in the invasion of Iraq in 2003. I'd done 3 operational tours of Afghanistan. I'd done 5 tours in Northern Ireland. I'd done training, tasks and missions all over the world. I'd done lots of time-sensitive targets. So by the time I left the military in 2010, I already had a huge wealth of knowledge on how these things work, how the military works with private entities, how they work on a diplomatic stage. After that, I went and worked for the British Embassy in Baghdad. There I was working with, top diplomats, EU delegations. So that was 4 years of my life in Baghdad. Then I moved to Ukraine in 2014 to 2019. I worked for the British Embassy, the Australian Embassy, the Canadian Embassy, collaborated a little bit with the American Embassy. I worked directly for the government of Ukraine. I often had meetings in the President's administration with the Secretary of State. I was on first name terms with them, guys. I used to go drinking vodka with these people. I understand how these things work. I understand the global spectrum, the temperament, the culture, the people, the language, so I understand how all this works. So when I talk about David Lammy, I'm not just some guy sitting here reading things off the page, reading articles from the news. I've been to these places. I've lived them. I know what I'm talking about. So the reason we started these channels, this one and our other platform, is because when Putin invaded Putin's second invasion of Ukraine in 2022, my mother, she turned up, she was crying, she didn't know what was happening, she thought the nukes were going to fly, she had 2 Aldi carrier bags full of chunky soup. I was like, what are you doing? She said, oh, Sean, can I come here and get in your cellar? Obviously, like a lot of veterans, you've got your cellar done out with a load of preps and stuff, and it dawned to me that the news that you guys are getting on mainstream, they're not telling you what's really happening, guys. I tell you what's really happening, so just consider my experience, where I've been before I continue with this, guys, okay? Nobody's telling people what's coming. So, David Lammy as Foreign Secretary, guys, so just consider what I've just said, about my understanding of Eastern European diplomatic relations, etc., David Lammy has had 3 years work experience. So once he graduated from law in California, I think, he spent 3 years where he worked for a law company in California. He then came over, he won his Labour seat in Tottenham or whatever, and he's been a career politician. Now, what world experience does he have? What global, what experience can he draw from other than that of the Labour Party? And the Labour Party will get their information, as the Conservatives would do, they will get their information from, civil servants who've got an agenda and people who've got an agenda. And let me just contextualise this for you. If David Lammy wants to know what's happening on the front line in Ukraine, he will send a request. Right, tell me what's happening on this location. They will go then, they will get a word from the front line. Whoever's writing that report on the front line, they will have an agenda. So they won't want to let their own deficiencies, their own, they will have their own, agenda when they're writing that report. That report will then get filed to somebody else. They will then look at that report and they'll change it a little bit because they've got their own agenda. Then they'll send it to someone else. They'll change it a little bit because they've got their own agenda. And by the time it gets to David Lammy, it might as well be a Christopher Nolan, you know, work, because it'll just be a work of fiction. You know, so where can David Lammy draw his experience from? What world experience has he got? What military experience does he have? Now, and again, you know, as Foreign Secretary, you shouldn't, you know, it's not necessary that you have military experience. But guys, look at the world as it is today. We kind of need somebody who knows how the military works, you know, because guess what? Militaries are about to be deployed all over the world. You know, and it's really important that David Lammy can understand the grouping systems, how Eastern European militaries work in contrast to how the British military works, for example. You know, and how all these things fit together. But guys, he doesn't. All he knows is what the Labour Party tell him. And what the Labour Party tell him is what they get from civil servants, which is, you know, agendaized. Let me just read you a quick article, guys, from, and I'll put this in the description. The madness of David Lammy. Is there any politician more hateful than David Lammy right now? This is the great irony of the Tottenham Labour MP's pose as fearless warrior against hate that was allegedly unleashed by the vote for Brexit in 2016. He himself has done far more than any Brexit voter to promote prejudice, division over the past 2 years. From his naked contempt for millions who voted for Brexit, whose wisdom he openly calls into question, to his casual, ahistorical and positively dangerous branding of politicians who are strongly committed to Brexit as Nazis. So he's calling Boris Johnson, Jacob Rees-Mogg, you know, everybody who voted for Brexit, he's calling them Nazis. Mr. Lammy has become the very thing he claims to oppose. A shrill, unreasoned, over-emotional, that's one of the things we need to come back on, guys. Over-emotional propagator of loathing towards certain sections of the population. Mr. Lammy's latest meltdown, and that really isn't too strong of a word, for his obsessive hatred for Brexit, came on the Andrew Marr show on BBC One. Marr asked Lammy if his previous comparison of European Research Group to the old racist rulers of South Africa and even the Nazis had been a little over the top. The ERG, European Research Group, the Eurosceptic wing of the Tory party, has never enforced or supported apartheid, far less it's propagated Nazi ideas. So Marr's question was a good one. Mr. Lammy's response was extraordinary. Now, this is where you need to take, we can't look at people with a new shiny, you know, with a new shiny like coat on as Foreign Secretary and, oh right, I'm going to be totally different now. No, people don't change. He's going to be the same David Lammy. Mr. Lammy's response was extraordinary. Not only did he double down on his foul Holocaust relativism by continuing to compare the present political situation with the most criminal political regime in human history. So he's calling Boris... Well, it says it better on this article. He pushed it even further by saying his comparison of the ERG to the Nazis was not strong enough. Guys, this is fascinating. Not strong enough. Think about what's being said here. Mr. Lammy is saying he was actually being too soft. Now, remember Mr. Lammy's background, guys, okay? He is I think he's got a degree and a master's degree in law. So he understands, or he claims to understand, or he should understand, you know, the context of his wording. He's worked, for 3 years, so a limited time, and he wouldn't have really learned much. But he understands the use of his words. So he's either really incompetent or really, really bad. Either one's terrifying. Mr. Lammy is saying he was actually being far too soft when he said Jacob Rees-Mogg and co were like Nazis. He is saying they are even worse than Nazis. These Conservative MPs who are favourable towards Brexit and critical of the European Union are worse than dictators who vaporised 6 million Jews and spread war, terror, fascism, authoritarianism, or whatever that, you know what I'm trying to say, guys, across Europe. What madness is this? Lammy told Ma that people who back hard Brexit, otherwise known as actual Brexit, and guys, we've not left the European Union at the moment because we're still part of the ECHR, the European Court of Human Rights. Lammy told Ma that people who back hard Brexit, known as actual Brexit, are promoting extreme hard-right fascism and wanting to make their own laws. I'm not backing off on this one, he said, as if standing by your hysterical elitist liberal agenda against politicians and Brexit supporters more broadly is evidence of a backbone and principle, when in truth it's evidence of your increasing vacation of the realm of reason and your corresponding inability to make any kind of rational or moral judgment. So guys, let's look at that there, guys. We've seen from that article his inability to make any rational, what's it say? Any rational or moral judgment. You know, what was the other thing we said? Yeah, over-emotional. So he's over-emotional. He can't make moral judgments. And he's the guy now who is either going to be putting us to war or making a peace deal. Guys, honestly, I genuinely can't think of a worse person to be, you know, to be Foreign Secretary. You know, David Lammy is not going to be able to negotiate with these people in Eastern Europe. He's not going to be able to do it, you know. Remember at the beginning of this video, guys, all my experience, you know, working in this area, working with these people on a practical level. So you need to get things done. You need Vladimir to, you need Vladimir, probably the wrong word to use. You need Vova to work with, I don't know, Dima. And these two guys don't like each other. So you've got to figure out how you can get these guys to work. David Lammy's not going to be able to do that. He's not going to be able to find common ways forwards that both of them can agree on, and then we can work from that. You know, I've never not been able to find a common denominator where we can all work together when I've been working on these projects. David Lammy, from what we can see, all he will do is he gets over emotional. He doubles down on these things, and he's got the inability from this article, the inability to make moral and objective judgments. So I'll tell you now what's going to happen, guys. Okay, if David Lammy is the Foreign Secretary for any length of time, you know, he's going to misread a situation. And he's going to either call, throw the race card, Nazism, or, you know, any other conjured slur. And then we're going to be in World War III. Because he's going to misread a situation. Because he doesn't have the experience to be in that role. Guys, you know, that's the reality of the situation. That's where we are today. And that's who we've got, you know. And then we've got Keir Starmer at the top. And I'll probably do a video about Keir Starmer later on. But he is our Foreign Secretary, guys. He's the one who's going to be going out there, you know, making deals, making moves, putting peace deals in there, you know, doing all this sort of stuff. And from the article, guys, nothing good comes from David Lammy, I'm afraid. Guys, this is my opinion. My opinion comes from my experience. My experience comes from hard work, graft, and a lot of bad decisions that I've made, guys. But you only get experience from bad decisions. You know, and then you learn from that. You don't make those bad decisions anymore. And where I am now, guys, I feel I'm in a good position to be able to comment on this. And I don't think anybody else can comment on this with as much depth as I can, guys, okay? So I'll put some interesting articles in the description about David Lammy. And guys, you know, that's where I see things going. And that's it, guys. I'm going to mag to grid, and I'll see you guys later.